Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the tutorial video for this custom Lego Scout Trooper. Now, this is a fairly simple tutorial. You don't need any like super specific skills to be able to follow everything and be able to show you. So, just have fun, relax, grab your paints and stuff. I'm gonna be going over materials in a bit, but I picked this trooper because he doesn't have any printing anywhere on him except for like his front torso, so that means we get to paint a bunch of details, and he comes with a plain black head. So like nothing super specific here to work with. These guys are pretty cheap on Bricklink. So first off, we're gonna need some paints. I used a brown ceram coat and a tan apple barrel for weathering. That's just mud and dust effects. And then I used this red ceram coat for the decal things that we're going to put on, and then some black for painting details. You can also use that for weathering. I did not in this video. Cool, so brushes wise, you're going to need some fine ones. I literally got these from Walmart, so that's cool. And then I also used this like destroyed one that we're going to use for weathering. Don't use a new brush because you are going to destroy it, and yeah, don't use one that you're going to want to use for something else. And then you're also going to need some fabric. You're not going to actually like totally need this. I just used it for fabric details later. I got this from a craft store. It was really cheap. It's really thin and has a high thread count, which just means that it's going to be more in scale for the minifigure, so it doesn't look like you used some super thick fabric. And then also going to just throw a backpack on them at the end and throw some dust effects on it because it looks cool and it adds a little bit more detail to the figure. Because I'm trying to make this guy as complex as I can since he's starting out really super simple and cheap, and I want to make him very custom. So let's hop right into it. Moving right along, we can start with torso. I put it on this little thing that I built out of Lego pieces just so I can hold it better. It honestly makes the entire process easier. So jumping through some painting shots here, I just kind of went around and painted around the arms because I used a reference photo of his armor, and he had huge gaps here. And then I just kind of like painted along the top of the torso because this part's hidden by the helmet, so we don't really need to add details underneath that. So shkapow, painted both sides. That was pretty easy. You don't need to paint the neck because again, it is hidden by the helmet. So jumping right into the helmet, I did a few main things. I painted in like his front vent. I don't know, black. Because that's how it looked in the reference image. And I also painted these side vents thing. I assume they're for ventilation because I don't really know what else they would be. And then I painted this other thing above his nose and then some lines above his mask because, that's how it looked in the reference. And then I swapped his legs out for these, painted the arms off camera and painted the legs off camera because I'm just using the exact same methods that I talked about, where we just kind of paint along the surface, and I'm just painting black on white, so there's nothing huge here. Now we can move on to weathering. This is the fun part. So we're going to start that out by putting an insignia on him. This is a figure that I've already created. He has an insignia over his helmet here. It's the Rebel one because I'm doing some like a series where I put Rebel insignia on Imperial Troopers because I think they look freaking cool. So yeah, we're gonna do that to this guy. So starting off, we're gonna need some ceram coat red paint. I'm just gonna pop his helmet off here and put it on the same thing that we used to hold it up for previous painting processes because it makes it easier. That way I'm also not like holding onto the figure and attempting to like paint without scratching off paint that I already have on the figure. So I'm just gonna put him back there for reference because I'm gonna use the insignia that I painted on his helmet as reference. That was the ceram coat red paint that you saw there. I just quick popped in, and then I'm just gonna slap a little bit of it in my painting dish, and then we can get going. I'm using a really fine brush here. Again, it's literally just from Walmart. I am the cheapest person ever when it comes to buying art supplies. Aside from a few of the paints that I have. Like a few metallic ones, and then obviously the ceram coat are a tad bit more expensive, but not anything insane. So honestly, with this part, you gotta just kind of look at a reference and paint it. It probably won't happen on your first try. It often doesn't happen on my first try. I actually managed to crank it out first try for this video, so actually nailed it. That was fun. So I just start with like a main reference point. So like the triangle thing, triangle diamond thing at like the top of the insignia. Um, that's where the top of the insignia is gonna be. So I can like kind of position it on the helmet where I want. So put that there, and then start with the other points, like at the top of the spear things that come up around the side of it. I'm describing this so poorly, but yeah, that's pretty much how I do it. So I kind of just eyeballed where those go, and then start briefly painting out like the edge of the kind of circle shape. Just adding layers of paint, rinsing my brush in between because you don't want to get paint build up on your brush, and I'm not using any paint thinner or drying retarder, so it doesn't like slow it down or anything like that. And these insignias are supposed to look super worn, so I'm intentionally applying the paint like very poorly. If you were doing this for a figure that you either weren't going to weather a ton or you want the insignia to look fairly nicely printed on it, I would highly recommend not painting it like this and painting in either more solid layers or just more specific strokes. I want it to look worn. I want the paint to look like it's like rubbed off in some areas, like it's been through the rain a lot and stuff like that. So honestly, as you can see, the insignia is turning out pretty spot on as far as I can tell. And the paint dries really super fast as you're kind of just throwing it all together here. So there isn't really any wait time to jump into the weathering afterwards. So as you can see, I'm just going through adding some more layers because I do want the insignia to be dark and stand out against the white. I don't want it to look like super worn off. Plus we are also throwing weathering over this, so I don't want it to get lost under all the weathering. So just kind of building up layers. That's how I did the rest of the figure too with the black, because painting black on white, well, painting white on black is harder, but painting black on white, those are opposite colors, like the most opposite you can get, so you got to do more than one layer. And then for this, for like the chipping effect, acrylic paint scrapes off of plastic so easily, specifically Legos. So I'm just kind of chipping away at it in areas that I think would get worn, so like along the front of his helmet here, and then just some random spots up here, just kind of wearing it down. When you're wearing away specifically an insignia, you don't want it to get too misshapen and disfigured to the point where you don't really know what you're looking at anymore. So just proceed with caution, because weathering is kind of difficult. And when you're weathering, the best piece of advice I've ever gotten was that you want to tell a story with it. So don't just like put some dirt on or like rub away part of an insignia or cut part of it or add a slash where there might not be one, because again, there might not be one there, and if you don't really have a reason for it, then why would it be there? So yeah, honestly, I actually loved the way this turned out, and I've painted a handful of insignia on other figures, specifically just like the two stormtroopers. One of them is pictured here, the other one is not. And then additionally with the helmet, I'm also going to paint insignia on his arms, so let's hop right into that. Put this part in time-lapse mode because you've seen me paint this already. So, just throwing the insignia on the arm, and then weathering it away. I like really overpainted this one, and then, just scratched it back with weathering, and now it looks fantabulous. So, there's that. And then, here's the other one. Just kind of painted it quick, overpainted this one as well. It's fine. And then we just chipped it back with weathering. And then next cool little detail that I feel like makes the custom really cool overall is these skull hands. So I'm painting with white paint on black hands, which is annoying because they're opposite colors, but then also white is just a pain to work with overall, because the pigment that they use to make it is like gloppy, for lack of a better word, and you usually have to water it down. Okay, you always have to water it down, so just be conscious of that as you're painting, especially for these. And then pick a brush with a really small tip, but not like tiny, because if you get the right brush or toothpick, because you could paint with a toothpick as well, you don't have to like make your lines thicker. Like your brush width will just be the same as the lines. You just have to like paint a little line because they're tiny little lines on hand. Um, Only downside to this is that they get scratched off really easily, and that's kind of a pain to deal with. But let's move on. So fabric, yeah. All right, I used a guide for mine, just like Pauldron from the Lego Sand Trooper. Really easy. You just kind of like put it on there, trace it out. I made mine a bit longer, just because I wanted it to hang down a bit further on the figure. And then just mark out where the holes are so that you know where to cut the little bit so that you can put both parts around his neck. And then obviously mark out the neck holes so that you know where to cut them, because it's easier to actually have a guide than to just kind of eyeball it. Yeah. And then you just cut it out and test fit it on your figure a few times, and after you're happy with the result, yeah, you got whatever you wanted. I had to cut out some parts to account for the backpack. Now, this part is kind of like a two-in-one, weathering and I'm molding the fabric to the figure. So I just heavily watered down some of the brown paint from earlier and brushed it all over the cloak, more at the bottom, and then molded it to the figure. And then grabbed an X-Acto knife and started scratching up the figure. Don't do this too much. It's really easy to overdo it. Just focus on areas that would get worn, like the edge of his helmet or armor plates or boots, spots that would get worn. Now we can hop right into weathering. I'm doing this with the brown that I showed you at the beginning, the Ceram Coat Iron Brown or something, I don't know. Yeah, so as you're watching right now, the main way that I do this is just putting a bunch of paint on and then dabbing at it with my finger. Um, the main thing about my weathering, two big pointers for when you're doing this technique, the like dab on and rub off technique. First one being that you can really easily show fingerprints, so don't just like press down on the paint. You have to like push it in a direction, if that makes any sense. Like don't just tap the surface, you have to like move it around a bit. I usually move it away from like the crevice that you're going for. So like when I was weathering the front of his boots, I was just pushing up a little bit because the dirt would move up. You just gotta like think about how the weathering would react on the figure, because you can weather whatever type of figure you want with the same method. And then as you can see here, I also use a paper towel. And then the other big pointer to this method is that you want to build up layers. So like you saw me doing in the boots, and as you're seeing me do on this torso right now, you just put a bunch on and rub it off, and then put it on and rub it off. And then you get to a point where you like the weathering on the figure. I was going for pretty muddy, and actually before the video ended, I went back off camera and added a bunch more to his boots, just so he could match the other two figures I did earlier in the same series. Second type of weathering that I add to all of my figures is dust effects. So the whole bit with the brown, that's like mud effects. And I'm going for like muddy figures, but when mud dries, it turns into dirt, and dirt gets dusty. Wow. So the main reason I do this is because it adds a lot of texture to the fabric, because it's like adding highlights to individual stuff. So overall on the figure, you're going to want to get a bunch on your brush like you saw me doing there, and rub it all off until there's barely any that comes off at all. And you're going to just want to really lightly dust it around. I start with the cloth because that gets the most amount of paint off. And then also you can see like the highlights come out as you, so like, wow, look at that. You can like see the texture of the fabric. Actually helps weather the fabric as well, because as you can see, there's like a whole bunch of particles that come off at the bottom. So that's pretty dope, layering it on. Not bad. I weathered both sides of the cape thing because you never really know what parts you're gonna see in a photo and what parts you aren't. And I'm making these figures to be photographed. And then I also just dusted up the backpack because I didn't put any dirt weathering on it because it's just brown on brown, and the brown color that I have is essentially the exact same color, so you wouldn't see it at all. And yeah, you could use black to weather a backpack, um, honestly, because that would probably work out really well, and I didn't think of that for this figure. Maybe I'll do that in the future. Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much at the end here. He's got a weapon left that I'm going to show you guys about, and then one little accessory on his helmet that we're just going to glue on. So for his weapon, just, this random sniper that I got from some Chinese weapon pack that I bought like a really super long time ago. Um, Never loved the look of this barrel, so after base coating it in black, because I don't like shiny plastic, I decided to wrap the barrel in a fabric detail, just to get rid of the ugly barrel look. And as you can see in the background there, I glued on. Honestly, don't know what that is. An antenna kind of thing, just on the side of his helmet. I mean, yes, I am aware that that doesn't actually occur in Star Wars, like actual figures, but I thought it looks pretty dope, and I love adding little details like that just make the figures more unique. So yeah, slight mistake here. The fabric is really thin, so I went to glue the fabric onto the barrel and effectively glued the fabric to the barrel and my finger. So yeah, um, probably ripped off some skin with that one. So anyways, after that, I just slapped some weathering on there, just the dust effects, because it brings out a lot of the detail in the fabric really quick, super easy. And then I also got some silver paint and just went over like the highlights, like the highlighted areas. How do I describe this better? The parts of the gun that would get worn before the rest of it. So like edges, not grooves, like around the trigger, the stock, the top of the scope, things like that. So cool. All right. Well, if you made it to this point in the video, congrats, because that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. If you have any other questions, you can hit up my DMs either on here or on Instagram. I'm usually around due to this quarantine thing. I will be around a lot. Here's a final look at the figure, all the details, the backpack, the helmet. I actually really liked how the weathering turned out. I added some more off camera. I also touched up all the details that I painted in front of the camera, because honestly, it's really freaking hard to paint in front of a camera. Anyways, here are the other two Stormtroopers that I made a while ago. Thought I'd just kind of pair them up, get you guys a good look at all three of them. The one on the left is from some concept art from Google, and the one on the right is my own custom design. So I'm also open for commissions if you guys want one of these for your own. So thank you, and see you guys next time.